Hello, huddlers. Today we're diving into what it really means to be an AI augmented CMO with someone who's living it every day. François Dufour has led marketing at companies like Twilio and Algolia, and now operates as a CMO wingman, supporting multiple B2B leaders at once using AI as a force multiplier. This conversation builds on what he's seeing across DevTools, cybersecurity, and AI native companies, and what actually changes when AI becomes part of your team. And I know we're all talking about this, but Francois is doing it. So hello, Francois. How are you and where are you this fine day?
Hey, Drew. I'm home in Palo Alto today. Thanks
Awesome.
for having me. I look forward to discussing this.
Yep, I think we're going to have you at our CMO Super Huddle in October because this conversation is not going to end here. But let's do what we do in most of our expert huddles, which is just in case our audience needs to leave early or we need to convince them to stay, please list 3 mistakes you see marketing leaders make when it comes to becoming AI augmented CMOs. And now just list them, try. It's really hard, I know. And then we'll go through them one at a time.
Sounds good. All right.
Okay.
So the first one's going to be obvious. It's delegating the AI work to their team and not being hands-on themselves.
Okay, that's
Uh,
interesting. And we'll go, so not being hands-on. Okay, number 2.
the second one is not blocking the time to build stuff collectively and repeatedly, because doing
Okay,
it together it changes everything, and doing it again and again, one and done doesn't work, is not enough.
okay.
And the third one, which yeah, it's being too nice to their team. Not daring to publicly shame the people who don't use and push AI enough. It's really great to do leaderboards and be positive, but at some point you sadly will may need to let people go if they don't use AI. So shaming them publicly is actually doing them a service, and most CMOs I see don't dare do that,
Yes,
or execs in
interesting.
general.
All right, well, let's go through these one at a time because delegating is really interesting. We just got back from 3 strategy labs in San Francisco, Palo Alto, and Seattle. And a lot of the CMOs, and I thought it was great actually, were really spending weekends getting up to speed on what the art of the possible was. And so they were putting a lot of time into, whether it's vibe coding or building stuff themselves. So how is it that, yes, they need to delegate, but they also need to kind of know what the art of the possible is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's why it's important to stay in touch with what's going on, what the others are doing, exactly joining the sessions like this, get inspired. So understand both what's possible, what others are doing. And I'm saying you can't delegate entirely to your team because you need to be acting as the top architect, just like you are the one deciding what context, what direction I'm giving my team. It's the same thing with AI. You need to actually, just like you onboard new employees, you need to onboard the agents, you need to onboard AI, give it the right context and architecture, all this. The CMOs I see doing that very well are deeply involved in making sure that's happening.
So they are making sure, and you call it architecture. I could just call it foundational work, no different than doing foundational, excuse me, strategy or positioning work. You need to do the same thing with AI. Now, but when it comes to delegating, because you made this at what stage? So we've set the strategy or the architecture, and we've provided all the context. What what are we delegating? I mean, all the builds, all the use case, what's happening there that you're seeing that's working?
Oh, so some CMOs are delegating the building the central context and central intelligence layer, typically to someone in product marketing and someone in corporate marketing. Make sure that's all centralized. Others are delegating of course, what you'll be doing on the growth side, go-to-market engineering, creating the campaigns, the systems. More critically, it's almost the architecture of do we do the integrations between or wherever our knowledge lives, whether that's Notion or other places like this, and how do we give access the AI or the AIs they would pick. When I'm saying they cannot delegate everything, so for instance, when they do hackathons, typically CMOs, please don't be a judge, be a player, because it's tempting to be, yeah, I'll be a jury, I'll be a judge, and I'll see what the teams come up with and give them feedback. You need to be hands-on, understand what's going on, especially what's missing. but also it shows the team you're leading by example. And most critically, the strategic leverage that using AI as a partner gives you as a CMO is really huge because we know how to guide it strategically, and we can get leverage from it that shapes our strategies, our directions that typically an IC on the team wouldn't be able to see with the same level.
That's amazing. And I guarantee you, I know a number of CMOs in our community have done hackathons, but I guarantee you they have not been participants. So I love that notion in number one. And number two, in theory, if what you're saying is because you understand the context, because you understand that you will be able to be a huge participant because you know how to leverage, you're coming in a sense, one step ahead because you have a firmer grasp of the strategy. Did I add two things together that weren't there, or was that what you were saying?
No, that sounds right. You
Okay.
would be at both levels. So 30,000 feet, you see strategically what the agents and the teams have access to and what's missing. Context, OKRs, goals, etc., etc. And also technically, you see where they're hitting some issues like this morning just I was with the team and you realize they're trying to connect their one of their tools to ChatGPT and oh they don't have access to this, the CISO has not accepted that, the fact that the CMO catches that quickly, and by the way the CEO was in the room at that point, boom, they can actually go prioritize and make that happen.
Interesting. Okay. So the second one that mistake that you're seeing, and I'm certain that this is true, is they're not building the stuff together. And talk about what you mean by that and what that looks like when it's working well.
Yeah, well, first the first thing is the CMOs I work with, rightly so, are so busy. Everybody's so busy. And so finding the time to do this is in their remit. This is they can actually decide we're going to be doing these things at hub sites, hackathons, etc. And it's for them really to help the teams block the time so that together you cannot keep having the excuse, I'm too busy to learn the things that will make me less busy. And so it's blocking times, for instance, that all hands on your CMO all hands have every time 2 to 3 people who show their cool and latest workflows. It's actually not thinking I'm going to do a AI hackathon once a quarter and then we're done. There are better models for that. An AI trainer yesterday I was talking to who's been doing that frequently thought, yeah, the initial training is good. What actually works very, very well, for instance, when you do sprints with a small team, of within 3 days, you do three 90-minute sessions with a small team and they build something. So you create urgency and you keep doing this together because otherwise there's context and priorities set in and they take over.
Well, and I think the notion of the CMO showing up in one of these scenarios that you're describing is walking the walk and saying by being there, the medium is the message. Because you were there, this is a top priority for you. That the organization is going to transform using these tools, and that's why I'm here and making time for it. It's hard. It's hard, but what I think we're behind this that we haven't really stated is this ultimately is going to radically change the productivity of your marketing organization and hopefully you. And so being in there in some of these builds is really important. Okay, and now the third one was being too nice. Now I want to push back just a quick second because I saw the extreme of this, and there's a lot of research on this. And a friend, Simo, was at a panel recently where folks were saying, yeah, it's going to cause some job loss, and bummer about that. And the reality is, most companies, the CMO surveys show that have a very small budget for training, and that budget just went down this year. So they are not training their people the way they think they are training their people. So maybe, and you have a story about that. I think you mentioned Meta yesterday, but I don't know if everybody's training. And so therefore, but they have the expectations that everybody on their own, on the weekends, whenever, is learning these tools. So before we get to, hey, see ya, you're not using the tools, isn't there some important training that has to be in place?
Yes. So it's important enablement. And So the training, you can bring in trainers, and now, of course, things change and evolve so fast that the trainings keep evolving. And that's why it's important to learn together because you're figure out things together. And the story you're referring to, Meta, recently Zuck asked a lot of his product and eng teams to do nothing for a whole week, but learn how to use AI, set up their assistants, set up mostly their agents. And he even went so far as doing, you can even postpone for a week that corresponding week launches and projects because it's critical we do this together at the same time. Now they prepared for this. What they did is they had their teams, IT and probably the platform engineering teams, set up the equivalent of open cloud called MyCloud that they set up on their own compute. So it was secure, it was accessible. They set up what they call Second Brain, which is a place where everybody can also have their knowledge and context. And for a whole week, people were said, don't worry about cost. You just go do this. Um, what happened is they were tracking which people were doing the most, using the most tokens, etc. There's the trend called token maxing, where people are just trying to show up, especially on these leaderboards, to show they're using a lot. But it's a good sign. So they were tracking also who's not using it, who's not building anything good with AI. And sadly, you've probably seen the rumors. They're about to cut a lot of people, and I'm pretty sure that's been taken into account in terms of who stays and who leaves. I've talked to a friend of mine who, for a week, actually set up his own agents and working with this. They were pretty much not on their own on how to do this, but they figure it out and they learn. And at the end of the week, he was so happy of how much of the stuff he hates that he automated. These satisfaction with jobs seemed to be much greater, and also understanding what's possible. Um, but at some point, if that's not enough, then this is where I'm going to shaming. You need to call out people who are not trying and figure out, actually, really, when you call them out, figure out what they need. Where are they getting blocked? Is it a mindset problem? Is it an email problem? Is it their tool is not approved problem? Just be very empathetic to them. But at some point, also after doing all the positive stuff, you need to just tell them it's not okay.
So I can't argue with you at all. There's no world that I can imagine, and you're doing them a favor in the sense that their next job they're going to need this. It's no different than if you went to a company and said, by the way, I don't use computers,
Yeah.
I don't use mobile phones, I don't use. That's the way AI. And there's no future job where you won't be using these tools necessarily unless you're ready to be a plumber or a electrician. And by the way, those are going to end up, you're going to end up using them for those too. So you're doing everybody who's at your company a favor if you can bring them up to speed. I have one issue that I want to sort of get at, which is what you measure matters. And that's what drives people. It's like if you incentivize sales strictly on sales, they will go and get the lowest hanging fruit, whether or not those are in your ICP, whether or not, the metrics the things that you measure matter. Leaderboards are simply measuring activity. They're not measuring results, impact, efficiency. It's just you used a lot of freaking tokens. And so I'm wondering if that's really misguided and there's another way to do this. Because, look, I could spend 100% of my time on AI, and that would be impressive, except for the fact that I spend 6 hours a day talking to CMOs, which is a lot more impressive.
Yes. So
Right.
that's the problem with token maxing. It can drive the wrong behavior,
Right.
but at least it tracks something. And so it's far from perfect and it should be changed quickly. But at least and it incentivizes you to run agents on the side and maximize
Yeah.
this. But at least that means people know how to actually build agents. And to the effect that you're still managing them by OKRs or whatever goal and system you're using, they still need to do and performing their job. So quickly you should change. And what I like is instead of leaderboards, well, on top of leaderboards, which you can also have and be smart indeed about what you feature there, it's having them build or at least complete and publish a list of their best workflows, their best agents. It could be a very simple Excel, Google spreadsheet, or Airtable, whatever it is. And you ask them to complete what's the workflow, is it something that makes me gain time or provide more strategic value to customers or internally? roughly how I've built it, and see maybe an estimate of how much time it helps them save. And everybody has to publish that. And then you actually take maybe every time you've got an all hands 2 to 3 examples, and you have these folks actually showcase their workflows, and you share that list, and everybody else will go hopefully at some point, oh, this is cool. Can you show me? And so this is really about finding a system that surfaces your top people, because this is
Right.
how you will find your champions, who's more advanced. Hopefully, those who also are, on top of being champions, are angels, willing and to spend the time to educate others, and also a simple tool to educate others.
Uh,
So
I
start
love
with
this.
that.
And it makes sense to me, but I want to go back to something you said earlier, which is this is a group sport, a team sport, a
Yeah.
lot of these workflows. And I'm sort of imagining, wait, the guy over here is solving a workflow that 10 other people at the company have. Couldn't the two people from that company work better, faster, solve a broader workflow? I mean, if everybody's out there solving these problems, are we really being efficient? So I don't know. I mean, it feels like as a leader, one of your primary tasks is allocating resources, right?
Yeah.
You set the vision, you hire the team, and then you allocate resources. So in that process, do you want everyone on your team trying to figure out better workflows? I don't. Maybe you do. I'm
I
gonna.
think it's a mix of both. It depends on the workflow, whether, first of all, is this workflow applicable to more than one person or more than a few people on the team? How complex is it to build? Does it require some IT help and some dev, at least some people who know both, some vibe coding, but also integrations? And you look at those, and ideally, everybody should be able to set up their own simple workflows using whatever tool they can. But for things that become more systematic, either are the most critical workflows for a given function. So, for instance, for product marketing, or for then you need to find who are my system thinkers. Are
Right.
they technical enough, or at least do they think enough in systems to actually be the ones that are assigned to go and solve this, collect the requirements, take the lead on that? It could be someone in PMM, could be someone in corporate marketing, could be someone in GTM marketing, or maybe you bring in some other external help, whether it's external of the company or from IT. And this is your role either as the CMO, or you maybe that's a very good projects for a head of marketing ops slash chief of staff to do that. Also, to your point earlier, Drew, there's a best practice is to further enable your champions. If you find people who are really, really good, make sure you give them extra budget, extra time, maybe even their own upsides that you pay for, where they get together and solve bigger problems, because then they'll come back to the company and further enable.
Okay, so just to wrap up this segment, we got three things that everyone here is going to walk away with. Don't delegate at all. Make sure you're in the mix there. Two, building stuff together. That it's this team sport, and so do that. And yeah, we probably don't want to be so nice or forgiving about slow adopters
Yeah,
in particular. And then sort of the extreme side of that is when you find these system thinkers, really support them because you need them, and sort of, I think it's easy to predict that every marketing team will have an AI engineer on there next year, if not sooner. So that's probably the extreme side of that. Okay.
yeah.
Hey,
Let
Drew,
me go back if you're okay
sorry.
with building stuff together.
Yes.
Two things. It's one the most critical thing is probably blocking the times together. It doesn't mean you need to do and build all the workflows together, but if you block the same time together, it gives you the license to actually spend the time, and there's no the other slacks happening and
Right.
everything that's vying for your attention.
Right.
And the other things they may need indeed things where you need to match the person who's really good at the marketing craft and the person who's really good at the systems. And ideally, you can have some small groups like that.
Yeah, it's so funny. It's not that different from the early days of web dev, in that you needed some people who could actually, code and knew how to, HTML, and then you needed people who knew how to communicate, and they were often different people. So,
Exactly.
uh, okay. So, Isabel, you have a question. Why don't you come on camera and we'll just get to it right now.
Yeah, sorry for the interruption. Hi, François.
Hey,
Enchanté.
Isabel.
From one French person to the other. Could you just repeat, Drew, the second point you made? You summarized the 3 points. The second point you made about the late adopters. Because I think what I heard was like call them out, but also be empathetic to understanding what's blocking them. Is that,
Yeah.
did I hear it correctly?
Yeah, well, in fact, thank you for jumping in because yes, it was your conversation, this and conversation that stimulated this. So I think the point is train them. So, and if they're still not using the tools and adopting it, you have to find out what's blocking that. And sometimes there's green reasons, sometimes there's legal reasons, whatever it is, whatever that resistance is, you need to understand that. And then I know one CMO who sort of said, let's work on this together. Here's a challenge. We can do this together we're going to build an agent for you together and walk them through it. And if they still don't embrace it, what Francois said is there's no more nice guy. I'm not sure about public shaming. I've never seen that work effectively as a leadership tool, but I do think the opposite of celebrating those people who are doing it once a week. Hey, here's a cool thing that somebody did in service of the strategy. Again, it can't just be a cool thing someone did. It's got to be connected to some big program you as the CMO believe. Again, I feel like efficiency is not the goal. Doing something you could never do before is the goal. By the way, there was a great editorial in Economist by Ethan Mollick, who is a professor at Wharton, who companies should treat AI as what it is, profoundly weird. And he just talked about that so much of energy is going into being efficient when, in fact, it's a weird tool. Do weird things with it, like do new things. So I love that. So did we answer your question, Isabel?
Yes, thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Well, we'll talk in a bit. So, all right. You use this word context that the hardest part of using AI has nothing to do with the tool. Can you make that practical for CMOs trying to get real leverage?
Yes. So there's this notion that context is everything in the way you expose your AI to your business customer context. And the reason is when you think of what's needed is really good models, a harness, that's actually the system that manages your agents, and context, if I simplify these things. The first two you're not building. The AI labs and the tools, they're building that and they're shipping extremely fast. So it's improving so fast that you'll reap these benefits anyway. It's the third, the context, that is essential, because when you give, even with a prompt that's not great, the right context to these really good models, you get good outcomes. And the third part, that context, the AI cannot invent it. They cannot come up with it. This is exactly what, as the CMO, is you're leading the team, setting vision, direction, priorities, etc. And so these agents systems are becoming so good that what we need to spend more time on is giving them access to this well-structured context. That can be your brand style guides, persona guides, product messaging, skills, and processes that are unique to your team. When you've got that, then the systems can actually pull up both orchestrator and sub-agents without us even knowing and working on those. That's why that really matters.
So give an example, real world example of, I'm just thinking, the simplest one is you have your brand agent, the AI generates some copy, that copy goes through then the brand agent to make sure that it's on brand. Then you might have another agent that says, hey, stylized wise, this needs to be a lot better. I don't know. What's a process that you have context when? Because I know you have real world examples.
Yeah, so I'll talk, if you want, my personal case. What I do is I advise 8 to 9 different CMOs at a given time every week. So I've got a lot of context switching. And that's probably the same for all of you. You've got different projects, different products, different stakeholders. And so I spend a lot of time consolidating my context. I use Granola for every meeting. I've organized everything around folders. I've got one folder per client and some other ones on top. I've created the same exact folder structure in Claude, which is my go-to AI. The same exact folder structure in Google Drive, because my workspace is also where I got my knowledge. And I make sure that at the end of the day, I create a little script that extracts from Granola all the the summaries of my chats, my meetings, and puts that into Google Drive, my Google Docs. So first of all, my clients then also have access to these notes, but also it keeps collecting that context so much. So that's number one. Number two, then what you're describing these agents, for instance, if you want to have a brain agent, then that means whether you create a skill, you need to actually give it all that that information, and that information needs to be updated. So I've got not only tools that at least all my folders which collect all that history, but also some skills that I've sometimes borrowed from AI trainer and friends that also customize, and then you give access also to that to Claude.
So can you give a specific example of a skill that you're applying to your setup?
Yeah. So for instance, the first it's a skill that is really good at using existing positioning and narrative frameworks and applying them to the context that I've said about my clients or that I input. So for instance, and you're all probably familiar with Andy Raskin's strategic narrative, with April Dunford's positioning. I've created a skill that actually did first of all, some deep research online, coming up with the best frameworks to do that. And then I give it an input, which is, hey, look at this landing page, look at this sales pitch, look at this post, and using I call it the narrative analyzer scale, determine, first of all, which of these templates or frameworks is the right one to use. Take two of them and apply these frameworks to critique the good and the bad and how this story can be improved. So that, again, using, first of all, input, scale, and then something that I can repeat and tweak.
And so the output of that is material that you can then talk to your clients with.
Yeah, or that I just look for myself. It's basically going to tell me, well, I use this framework, and then indeed, this is really what's clear, what's working. This is what they can improve. And it just gives you something. Of course, I never send that as it is to my clients,
Right.
but it just gives me, at least informs my opinion, to actually then have a discussion with them and tell them, yeah, I think that we can improve there, or we could actually double down on this.
Okay. We do have another question that we might as well. I mentioned this notion of an AI engineer. Maybe you could talk about if someone, what is this person? I mean, we've talked about system thinking, but how the question, what are the proof points that they actually know how to do this and skills that they have? And I don't have any idea if you know what the salaries are for these folks.
Well, salaries, I'm going to guess, well, it's going to vary greatly by location and seniority,
Right.
I'm sure. The easy way to I think about this is it's basically the modern AI version of marketing ops. But if you think of marketing ops, there's the people who run the campaigns, the people who do analysis, and the people who set up and build stuff. It's more the latter. It's the builders who also understand how to use and bring together different tools. And they are AI first. The way you figure out if they're good or not, you simply ask them, hey, show me what you've set up.
Right.
And how did you get, first of all, the requirements? How did you get the idea? And then how did you evolve the workflow or the agent? And you ask them to demonstrate. And you're listening for, is it creative? Is it teaching me something? Are they technically pretty good? Are they using the right modern tools? And then they're onto something.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and the difference between this person and me, I can go in and write the best prompts in the world and find them and borrow them and put them in there. I, at the moment, don't really know how to connect an API. And I know I could probably go into Notion and figure it out, but I don't want to. It's not my thing. I'm not that kind of thinker. And so I want people who want to do that, who want to go in and connect those things. And I do think that some of this is more than AI usage. This is understanding how technology can work together.
Yeah, they need to understand some of these building blocks like that, indeed. So, for instance, I'm not a developer, but I used to run marketing at Twilio, so I do understand APIs. But when I use Claude Code, for instance, a lot, very often I need to actually go to a specific tool and get the API key, come back in. I understand the difference between an MCP connector and an API, when to use that. And you need to find someone who gets these differences.
And by the way, I don't know what the difference is between an MCP connector and an API. I don't know if the other folks listening are. Could you just give us that definitions for a second?
Yeah. So the API, application programming interface, is basically the language through which software communicates together.
Right.
This is really what's been used and mostly used by developers to actually make two different tools work together. It's robust, it's safe, it's secure. It requires some coding to assemble. And the MCP, think of that as an abstraction layer just on top. So the MCP now, when you go to Cloud, for instance, they call them connectors. It's an abstraction layer on top of the API. It's a little simpler. It's not as secure. It's usually not as fully featured and not necessarily as performant, but it's much easier to use. So for instance, if you go into, and they've got, limited functionality. But if you go into Cloud Core, for instance, today, and you want to try one that's really, really easy to use and fun, you go to connectors, you enable a few of them. There you have Google Drive, Gmail, Google Calendar. My favorite is Granola. And you see connectors. You can actually then add them. You'll need to authenticate yourself, of course. You get many other ones. Gamma, you get more and more and more. Then you just pick one and go into the setting to see the permissions you can give them. And then you see all the capabilities. So for instance, in Gmail, it can read your email. It can create drafts. It cannot necessarily send. So you've got limited functionalities as MCPs. Again, much easier to use, etc. But when you see the permissions, you get a really good understanding of what they can do. And sometimes this is where you realize, shoot, the stuff I really want to do is not doable with the MCP or the connector today. And then you need to actually get into maybe some vibe coding using Cloud Code or Codex, or find someone who does that for you.
And your AI engineer should be able to do that for you. And again, if we're delegating stuff, I don't necessarily think the CMOs are going to get in that level, but they need to understand a little bit about how these things come together. So this is a kind of a weird question, but you talk about how this is all integrating with Gmail and G Drive and so forth. A lot of us live in the Microsoft Outlook world. Are we crippled because of that?
I don't use the Microsoft Outlook world. I think you don't have the same capabilities necessarily. Now, for instance, Claude doesn't have the best connectors to Google. Claude has amazing, or at least it depends on what's Google building the MCP connectors.
Right.
Great connectors. Granola has a great connector. Granola and Notion have great connectors. So it's evolving very quickly. And so you need to just figure out what your team uses, ask your IT team, or just ask your more technical people to tell you. However, going back to your earlier point, if you're a CMO, you should understand how connectors work and which ones you have access to. Because they're the tools you already are using, including you're using Slack. There's a Slack connector. You're probably using calendar and email. Well, you are, I know. So go figure out what's in there, because co-work, in the case of Cloud or Codex, it needs to also become your thinking and strategic partner. An example that I figured out this week, I can't believe I didn't see it earlier. You go in Cloud Co-work, and there's a set of playbooks they have. And if you use Granola, for instance, and Google Drive, you can simply enable these connectors and create your daily brief. And every day is going to run a task that actually, I see Alan pointing the thumbs up. Every day is going to create very easily a little digest that shows you who you're meeting, the critical emails you need to pay attention to, and a few points about your day. In the just two prompt. The prompt is preset. You just enable the connectors and let it run.
By the way, while we're sounds like this is something that everybody should have. I certainly don't have my daily brief. I am not using co-work. I will. The question I sort of have on that, just in general, is how, again, do I have to switch our company off of Outlook in order to really do this? We can probably do it in Outlook right now.
There's got to be some ways that Outlook works with, with ChatGPT, Cloud, and others. Especially, for instance, Cloud is really, really good with the Excel the Microsoft 365 suite. So it's got great integrations into PowerPoint, into Excel, and it just released also Word.
Okay, so fine. Well, to be determined. I do feel like the Copilot on Microsoft has limited a lot of folks that are just Microsoft shops where they can't use Claude. I feel very bad for them. But I also feel like every CMO who is in a Microsoft shop better befriend their IT and their lawyers and get over that, because they are going to fall behind. I mean,
And then I just saw this morning there's a connector between ChatGPT and SharePoint. So if you're Microsoft SharePoint, there's a connector, and then there's also tools like Lean that also help you consolidate all that context.
if your company will let you use Claude, if your company, and there are companies out there that are not letting their employees use ChatGPT or Claude, they can only use what Microsoft has, and I feel bad for them. And by the way, side note, if you know somebody who's killing it with Copilot, please let me know, because we got to get them here to help those folks that are stuck on Microsoft. And because it's a problem for them, but we got to help them probably more than the others. All right. Let's see, we've covered a lot. We talked about Granola and Claude and how you've sort of got your daily brief. You're also having AI surface recommended topics for each client. Is that part of your daily brief?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So it's simply thanks to this great Granola integration where I've got all my meetings organized by client folders. I simply, it was one prompt. I told Claude, I think it was Cowork, to tell me for every meeting that I have, when you see there's something coming up on my calendar with a given client, since it came up by analyzing my Granola meetings with who's my client, it could guess. So now it's got this list of my clients mapped by companies. It's identifying who's I'm talking to. I've told it look through the last 3 meetings, or at least the last meeting, tell me what are the 6 things or up to 6 things we talked about, and recommend 3 to 5 topics we should tackle today.
So for those who have not used Granola, including myself, are you taking your meetings on Zoom and just inviting Granola? What's happening? How is Granola getting into your meetings? Or what functionality does Granola bring to the table?
It runs locally on my Mac. It's running right now, but you don't see it in the Zoom. So it's transcribing everything we're doing. It's not recording. And it's, as a result, I've got at the end the full transcript of the meeting, and it automatically generates summaries. I can structure the notes the way I want as I'm working. And you can create the equivalent of, it's called recipes, Granola food theme.
Yeah.
You can create at the end, just like with an AI note taker, you can just ask any question from it, but also you can save recipes. It's like a GPT. It's a prompt you save that you can run every time on the meeting. And you can run on them on the meeting, on the folder, or on everything. So for instance, one fun thing I've done for my clients at the end of the year, I've created a recipe, which is like the Spotify Wrapped. It's the year-end review. I created a prompt that says, hey, look through all the meetings with this person, identify all the strategic topics we covered, the progress they made, the blockers they had, the topics we addressed most, and the topics that you recommend we tackle the most next year. And then I also did the whimsical stuff, identify if they were a famous song, what's their spirit animal, what's their go-to catchphrase, what's the word they should be using less. And I created just very simple Word documents, or at least Google Docs, that I put in an email and send them as a end of year.
I love it. You know what? I want one more step. If it went straight from your program, if you will, to an email draft, that would be killer, right?
Yes, but I did review everything because I wanted to make sure nothing was going to be offensive to them. Especially the spirit animal and the song. I wanted to make sure it was okay.
Note to the CMO Huddles team, we need to be testing this just right away, because I can see all sorts of interesting applications for it.
This is huge also for all of you who've got a sales team managing strategic accounts. If you can find something like this, that if you record every call, could do a quarterly recap of the progress they're making. There's ways you can really instrument something really engaging for customers.
And so a lot of companies have systems like Gong, which are getting, where they're recording their sales calls, and then they're running. Those are a starting place for some amazing sophisticated things, looking at win-loss rates and what happened in those calls, helping provide tutorials for the sales people who are off message and not not doing well, customer insights, competitive alerts. There's a lot of cool things that happen there that, if you're really putting a brain on top of Gong, it can be a huge asset. I'm wondering, is that the same thing that in theory you could do? Because you could take all those conversations, upload those conversations, and start to do trends analysis.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So you can then create these prompts, either one-off or you save them and you run them to analyze something, look for trends, or what I really, really think is great for marketing teams to think about is how can we turn this into a high value, added value asset for the customer? Something that helps them learn, think about further, just gives them extra insights, etc., and feel special.
Well, and I think that's a really good transition to what I think is, so a lot of AI has been a tool in search of a problem or a strategy. And if we say that the strategy of the organization is to put the customer at the center, and how do we use AI to help the customer? That to me is a very liberating approach. Right now, we're not looking at just efficiency, because efficiency is good because that allows us to maybe lower costs or service faster. But we're thinking about tools that we can, the recap that you described. And I'm curious, in your conversations with CMOs and some of the things you're doing, are there some AI really cool things that some of your customers are doing to sort of in the name of customer centricity?
Yeah, so for instance, there's one I work with who created in cybersecurity a fantastic maturity model for the cybersecurity discipline they're encouraging and empowering. And initially I built them a quick prototype, so they put the maturity context, all the white paper into cloud, and I told it, can you vibe code the equivalent of a survey so that people can quickly answer their surveys, see what stage they're at, and as a result, automatically spits out recommendations for how to get to the stage they're at to the next. They thought it was pretty cool, and they created that, which is now on their website, because I couldn't instrument it in a way that would scale. And
Right.
but this is value add, which turns something that's, when you read maturity models, is not super engaging, but all of a
No.
sudden it becomes this survey, this interactive tool that they can take. And by the way, as they complete this, you further qualify them like crazy for follow-up with sales or campaigns. And that's the type of value add you can create. Just like the ROI calculators will build. Now it can also be a little more engaging if you vibe code them. You can also structure a lot of information about it and organize them by vertical and try to recommend and find the right insights to give back to a given customer in that vertical, where you take these are the solutions that are right for you, the right ROI calculators, the right case studies, the right quotes. You can package that up and then give it to sales, they review and they send over if it feels right.
Small thing, but and quickly. So you've run hackathons and training sessions with
Yeah.
teams. What are you seeing that's working that other than the CMO participating actively to accelerate AI adoption?
Yeah, the first thing for these hackathons is make sure that there's a team that prepares them by giving access to the right tools first, making sure they're set up. So whatever you use, make sure that they're available that day. Two, start with a few presentations before the actual hackathon where someone, the exec probably gives the mandate and the encouragement. Then I recommend you have 2 to 4 more presentations where people show their workflows, like I was talking about earlier. They inspire others, like, this is what I built, this is how I did it, and pretty specifically show them how they did that. Then maybe 1 or 2 people who know a solution very well, could be IT who set up your Glean account or whatever tool. They do a little demo and enablement of that. Then you want to put teams together where you've got folks who are advanced and folks who are not as advanced together so they can inspire each other. And at the end, you get them to present. There's a jury, you give gifts, make sure the execs are there showing the results. Because every time I've seen those, there's always an exec that says, I don't know if you win or not, but I want to fund this. And it gets the team energized. But my advice is then when you've done that, just don't stop and wait for a whole quarter before doing this. Keep making times and blocking times. It could be a Friday afternoon every other week, whatever, for teams to continue like that. And then create small pods that are going to continue to work together on these projects and give them budget. This is where AI trainers can also help and
Right.
make sure that they give guidance and be there during the
Right.
hackathon.
I just, again, I want to make sure that in this process that there's a strategy and a goal, that there's outcomes that we're trying to do. There's customers that we're trying to serve. There's problems that we're trying to solve, that either internally or externally, that ladder up to something big. Because all of us could build cool things, right? But they may or may not move this so that there's an infinite number of tools. There's an infinite number of things that we could do. And by the way, I do think that's the downside of this, is there are a lot of folks that are spending 18 hours a day because it's just so cool to make stuff.
Yes, great point, Drew. And I told you we were doing, we had a team that was specializing in organizing and helping very large strategic accounts do hackathons. And the way, to your point, we would prepare them is looking through S1s and filings and working with the exec to identify what are the top priorities that you like that your team can pick up on these projects, the hackathon. Strategic priorities and things that ideally they would take on. The teams don't have to take them on. They can take something else, but at least there's suggestions of big strategic problems to take on.
Okay. Isabel Papulias, would you like to ask another question?
No, I'm good. I think if Francois just touched on it, I wanted to double click on it needs to come from strategy. I guess I'll just continue here because I find that personal experiences, we all, I come out of a lot of these AI conversations and it's the amount of use cases and all the things that we could be doing is overwhelming, right? Like, I think it's limitless. And what's missing from the conversation consistently is the strategy, is the manifesto as a company. Why are we using AI, right? And so, thank you, Francois. It's like, so it's really pushing what are the core strategic priorities and then just anchoring everything around that. Otherwise, it just becomes just too much, really.
That's a very good way to do it. Now, there's also things that don't look like a strategic priority, but are amazingly manual, routine, and weighing your team down. So it's important to let it also surface from bottom up and let them list that and give them the time to work on those. And because even for myself, there's stuff that I realize I always put off to the end of the day, the end of the week, or never get to. And at some point, it's like, well, let's spend 2 to 3 hours, maybe more, actually, making sure I automate it. And then once I'm done, I'm like, oh my God, my life is so much better now. I can spend time on more strategic things.
Right.
But
and
this is probably where you want to come in and prioritize.
Yeah. I mean, I do think there are lots of, a stage, stage one is everybody's using it for content, but even within content, there are workflows that are really messy that could be greatly improved. And then so I do think that an audit of workflows is in order. You're right, because those are some easy things. And one example that we talked about at a strategy lab was that your funnel right now is probably incredibly inefficient. And if you could use AI to somehow or other make it more efficient, that's a worthy thing. And by that, I mean, you have 100,000 leads coming in and that becomes MQLs and finally you get down to 20, close one or whatever. That's a huge amount of waste. And so if you could figure out a way to use AI to drive efficiency there, that would be a very sophisticated use case, right? Have you seen anybody do that?
Yes, actually, the AI hackathon I was a judge at, there's a team that actually did exactly that. They gave AI access to their Salesforce and identify where we have opportunities to increase conversion rate from one step to the next, what to do, etc. And that was one of the ones where the CEO raised their hands like, if you don't win, I'll fund it. And you should have seen the team was so energized.
Yeah. That's
coming
great.
up with the idea and seeing it was possible.
No, and that when you get to those kinds of things, you're really helping the business move forward. And I think to sort of Isabel's point, as the leader, again, your job is to allocate resources and make sure that there's focus on the big things that matter. And obviously, efficiency of pipeline, and I was sort of, it's no different than having a better defined ICP. If you have a better defined ICP, then you can screen out all the ones that aren't in it, right? And you are better and better at closing those things. So focus matters. But in order to focus, one of the things that's clear to me in this conversation is you need to have some sense of the art of the possible.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think that's really hard right now because it's moving so damn fast.
It is hard. Now, there's some resources that are really good at recapping some stuff. So, for instance, I don't know how many of you watch or listen to Marketing Against the Grain by the SVP and the CMO at HubSpot. But it's inspiring to see the amount of time they spent themselves playing with the tools, learning it, and then sharing that back to others. And when you do something like that, of course, they spend a lot of time on it, but it's essential for their business because they've always been a content business, a thought leadership business, also a tech business. It really sends the signal to the rest of the team. Like, if my CMO can find the time to do that, maybe I should too. And they understand the art of possible. So Marketing Against the Grain is a good resource. There's other ones that you could find or I can recommend that are not so long to consume. And what I've noticed, the more you understand the art of possible, the more you can put two and two together and like have creative ideas or allow your team to have creative ideas because you realize, oh yeah, I can take this, match it with this, and we can build that. Right. And it's really fun.
And that's one of the superpowers of most CMOs is they can connect dots that others can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this should create those opportunities. It just doesn't feel like it always, right now, at least. All right, we're running out of time, and there's so much more that we need to cover. So obviously, we're going to need to do this again. But let's give the folks here 2 key takeaways that you want every CMO listening to remember when it comes to becoming an AI augmented CMO. 2 takeaways.
Again, block the time at the same time of other people on your team, so it feels easier to do that, and identify your key champions and ideally champions plus angels. So those are going to be okay spending time with you and others showing you how to do stuff and helping you be your partner. And be okay to be vulnerable. Just say it's okay to when you don't know, because no one knows. It's moving too fast. Yeah. I bet you even the people who work at the AI labs can't even keep up with their latest tools. Yeah. So it's okay to see I don't know, and this is where you need to just have someone else help you and tell them I need help.
I love it. All right. Well, François Dufour, thank you for joining us. Where can people find you, and when should they hire you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, of course, and then also publish a newsletter that you can also find on LinkedIn. Once every other week, I share some of the things that I learn and I see from others. Yeah, that'd be great to connect.
Awesome. All right. Well, I do hope that you put October 22nd and 23rd on your calendar. We'll be in Palo Alto for the CMO Super Huddle. Thank you, François.